king of the underworld, dread god that captured Persephone and caused famine upon the face of the earth for his royal will. He who is faceless, who knows the name of every precious gem and ore that Gaia crafts. But, like many of the ancient gods, Hades is an epithet, a title. In Roman mythology, his name is Pluto, which means the wealthy one or giver of wealth, and is a reference to his ruling over all the precious gems and metals that reside in the earth. However, Hades, as he was known in Greece, means the unseen. It's not surprising, then, that he shares this title with his domain, the underworld, as it's not to be seen by any living thing, with a few exceptions, but those will come later. Truly, when Hades was referenced as the domain, it was a shortened way of calling the underworld the House of Hades, a tip of the hat to the king and its inhabitants, the unseen, the dead. The House of Hades houses many dark, cold, and unforgiving places, but it was also home to fields of flowers, groves of cypress trees, and quite a few other geographical locations that are well known to the ancient Greeks. These landmarks of the underworld were well known enough that the followers of a particular cult of Dionysus received detailed directions carved onto small plates of gold on how to avoid the bad parts of the underworld and skip straight to the pleasant VIP access only parts of the underworld. Maps. Yes, I'm telling you, there were ancient maps of the underworld in ancient Greece. How cool is that? I can't hand you a golden map today, but what I can do is tell you about some of the incredible places in the underworld. To begin, we are going to start a deep dive into some of the biggest, most impressive landmarks of the underworld, the rivers of Hades. In the modern world, we understand that water doesn't just sit on top of the earth. We have reservoirs and basins and oceans and rivers that run underground. Underground water is intriguing in its own right, but it's not a modern phenomenon. The ancients had knowledge of rivers that ran underground, and they believed that when they did so, their unseen parts went exactly as you may logically conceive, to the realm of the unseen, to Hades. They also believed that the underworld was surrounded by one great river, a titan named Oceanus, and from his waters all other rivers began. The titan Oceanus was married to the titaness, and his sister, but no big deal, Tethys. Together they produced many primordial titans, but perhaps most infamously, Our Lady of the Dark Waters, Styx, whom we will be visiting today. 5 rivers reside in Hades: Styx, Phlegleton, Lethe, Acheron, and Cocytus. Each has its own power and role to play in the unseen realm, and most of them have their own divine beings that reside in and around them, just like other rivers. The underworld was very much a mirror to that of our earthly realm. Just like the rivers of Earth had nymphs, creatures, and gods associated with them, so did the rivers of Hades. When I learned about there being underworld river nymphs, I was absolutely entranced with this idea. Digging deeper into this information sent me down a huge rabbit hole of uncovering a realm I'd not heard much about, well, anywhere at all. As I mentioned before, the underworld is a whole realm of places, divine beings, and its own history. The House of Hades lies just beyond the veil, and I am so very excited to cross that threshold with you today. Today we are kicking off our entry to the underworld with the most notorious and largest river of the underworld, Styx. With one of the most well-known legacies in human history, it was no surprise to find that there are many places in Greece, both modern and old, that claim to be the beginning of the river Styx. Most interestingly, One of those places is in Arcadia, a place that many truly ancient beliefs and deities spring from. Anyways, this place today is known as Chelmos Mountain, and the ancients were very well aware of how deadly it was to drink from its waters. Allegedly, Alexander the Great was murdered with water from this very Stygian spring mixed into his wine. Now, of course, this is folkloric territory. However, I have read that scientists today have tested this spring, and it does hold some amount of bacteria that could potentially be pretty harmful to ingest for any human being, which I found to be incredibly interesting. The folkloric poison of the spring of Styx actually holds some merit. I love it when that happens. Though many cities have claimed to house the font of Styx, in myth, Styx finds its beginning and its end in Oceanus, which in ancient Greece was called the Great River of the World. Styx snakes its way around the borders of Hades a whopping 7 times, making a formidable border between the world of the living and the realm of the dead. Styx has waters deep and darker black than any moonless night. It's the river of whose name is a verb, loosely translating to hate, to abhor, to dread, or sometimes shuddering. Styx is said to be dark, calm, and cold, adding more to her ominous nature and bringing a sense of gloom to those who walk her shores. Maybe you caught that I just personified this river, because whilst Styx was believed to be an actual river with flowing, underworldly waters, Styx is also a goddess in her own right. You see, as I've mentioned before on the podcast, in mythology across the globe, oftentimes myths were a way to understand the elements of the world around us the best way we humans know how, by relating. Enter personification. And it could be said that the Greeks had personifying the world around them down to an art. Something that transcended time is the human desire to know that which may otherwise seem unknowable, which is why I love mythology. Styx is the only underworld river directly named in Homer's Iliad, but Hesiod was the first to personify Styx, and when he did, he personified her in writing. In Hesiod's Theogony, we learn quite a bit about Styx as a goddess. We learn that Styx is the eldest of the Oceanids, the daughters of Oceanus, the great river of the world, as I mentioned earlier, the personified version of the world's oceans. Where Poseidon has dominion over the oceans, he isn't actually the energy and matter that makes up the ocean. This little nuanced bit of information is something I find fascinating and want to go deeper with, but that will come when we talk about the Titans later on in the House of Hades series. Anyways, Styx is the daughter of Oceanus, the great river that encircles the world. It makes sense then that as his daughter, she would be a formidable river in her own right, and indeed she is. I mentioned a moment ago that Styx encircles the entirety of the underworld 7 times. And as you'll come to understand by the time this series is over, the underworld is huge. So Styx is big, and her reach is far. Her shores and her waters touch many places that have only been known to her and to darkness. You must go through Styx in order to reach the underworld. So, in this way, she is both gate and gatekeeper. She is the mother of the ferryman, Charon, whom you pay to take you across her dark still waters. Did you bring your coin? I thought not. That's all right. I brought appropriate payment for us both today. One for each of us. You probably noticed by now where we are. Yes, this lake is beautiful, and Nyx is brilliant and bright tonight. The reflection of her stars is as enchanting as it could possibly be. However, I'm going to peel both of our gazes from the sparkling brilliance of the night and back this way. Yeah, behind us, It's a cave. There were and are certain liminal spaces believed to be portals between worlds, and in this case, our waking world of the living and house of Hades. Now, I'm going to give you this veil, a sheer black shroud to cover your face just like this. Yes, perfect. You see, those who don't bring a coin can't cross the river, like I mentioned, and are stuck on her shores as shades until someone from the living world provides them with a coin. Shades are like shells of spirits. They lose more and more of themselves the longer they stay on the shore, only able to languish in death rather than to move on. We're covering our faces so they don't see how alive we are, because there's no telling how fast they'd be upon us and try to steal our coins, regardless of if we brought one or not. They could tear us apart. But don't worry, that's why we're veiling. Just don't let the veil fall and you'll be fine, okay? Make sure you put your coins somewhere safe. I'm going to keep mine in my mouth because, well, tradition, and I know I won't lose it in there. Probably. Anyways, we don't need to talk until we reach her temple. Well, no, it's not a temple like you're thinking, you see. We'll be paying Charon to ferry us to the dwelling place of the goddess, Styx, to the mouth of the river, where the whole thing begins. That's why I brought the coins. This is no standard trip we'll be taking, but it's not every day you get to go to a temple and honor a dread goddess like Styx, right? Yes, I've done this before. We'll be in and out no problem. Just like we walk in through the cave, we'll walk out the same way. Come on. All we have to do is walk into the cave and keep going. The shadows will do the rest. As you enter the cave, the light from the full moon is swallowed up by darkness that feels all-encompassing. One moment, shadows tease the corners of your vision. Next, there's nothing. Only the soft feeling of sand beneath your feet. Focusing on the metal taste of the coin in your mouth and the sound of soft footfall on sand, you will your fears away and focus on taking steps carefully so you don't fall. You reach out to feel if there's anything to steady you, and you're met with emptiness. You keep walking forward, probably, for what feels like an eternity. Just as you go to pull the coin out of your mouth and check that you're still there, that you're still real, the shadows return. And where there is shadow, there must be light. So onward you press. It isn't long before you walk out another mouth of, you assume, the same cave. Before you stands a great beach with onyx sands. They gleam in an otherworldly light that you can almost feel. The light here dances, moves, lingers. If you don't look too hard, there is a gloomy gray to the light here. But when you focus, you see that it isn't gray, it's silver. You quickly start to realize that the light is coming from the river itself, reflecting off of the still waters that are somehow a deeper black than the onyx sand beneath your feet. It's incredible. If you didn't have this coin in your mouth, your jaw would be on the floor taking in the terrible dark beauty of it all. Your attention is soon taken from the scene as you become aware that you're not the only one on the beach. Your companion is just ahead, clearly unbothered and certain of the way, so silently you follow, while you try not to stare at the translucent shades moaning, weeping, and tearing at all of their being along the shores of this great and foreboding river. You decide to keep your eyes down for the walk to wherever you're going and fall into a soft cadence behind your friend. And you focus on the nearly silent river gently lapping on the shore to your right. You nearly bump into your companion as you lift your gaze slowly to shake yourself out of the trance you'd easily moved into. Now, you're at the base of a great waterfall. The dark black water pours over the moonstone and onyx rock face before you, and the water spray catches the light and sends fractals of rainbows into the water below. With a sort of sickening fascination, you realize that the waterfall, as tall as at least 10 men, makes no sound at all. Struck by its strangeness, you nearly miss the chance to take in the carved stone pillars on each side of the waterfall, silver and luminous, made entirely of moonstone, before your friend gently pulls you behind one to a set of hidden stairs. Up and further up you climb until you stand at the top of the waterfall, the ground beneath you the same smooth onyx speckled with moonstone that the waterfall cascaded over so silently. Your companion reaches into her cloak and in one hand produces a miniature goblet made of silver metal, and with her other she produces a small vial of oil you know is fresh olive oil by the color, which she hands to you. Reaching into her pocket once more, she pulls out a rose, white petals that fade into a deep purple, nearly black. Both standing as close to the rushing water as you can without slipping on the thick stone, your friend gives you a knowing glance, and then a nod. You uncork the small vial, and with a deep breath, conjure the name Styx in your mind and heart. On your next breath, you pour the olive oil into the mouth of the waterfall. You look and see your friend do the same measure with her rose. After you both watch the rose petals go over the edge and into the gossamer mist and darkness, your companion carefully bends down to gather water in the tiny goblet. Once you are both on a more dry portion of the incredible stone floor, your friend, with intense care, pours what feels like merely a drop of water into your mouth. You are careful to hold the coin under your tongue, but that is soon forgotten. The silence is gone. The stone is alive. You can hear it vibrating, humming, no, singing. The walls, the floor, the ceiling, the stone is singing. A haunting, beautiful song, like how you imagine the sirens sing before luring a sailor to a tomb. As you look around you, you can see now that the stone that you thought was simply a deep black has veins as thin as spider silk of gold and silver, and they too are humming. No, they're singing. You have to get a closer look, and in awe, reach out, led by a force that seems to be completely outside of your own. When you touch the wall, the humming becomes a cacophony of whispers. 1,000 voices whisper 1,000 promises inside your head. It doesn't take much for you to understand that you are hearing all of the voices of all those who have ever sworn an oath by the river Styx. Oaths, promises, the most secret truths of the heart echo unrelenting in your head. 1,000 whispers all at once is deafening, and you'd laugh if it wasn't so unbearable. Reaching up to cover your ears, the whispers end the moment you release your hold on the wall. You've never thought to describe a shiny rock as mischievous, but the sparkling veins of gold and silver were certainly glinting in precisely that way. Your friend is looking at you with a very worried expression, and you understand you were the only one to hear those whispers, all of them, even for a moment. You take your friend's hand and place it on the wall, and see their eyes go cloudy as they hear for themselves. Giving it only a second, you yank their hand away quickly, and when they come to, you think that their look of complete bewilderment mixed with a dose of gross fascination is precisely how you feel. You both stand and look into the precipice of the waterfall for a few long moments. After a while, you both go back down the steep stairs behind the impressive moonstone pillars, right back the way you came. However, On the way back, you do not turn your face down this time. Looking around you, you see the shades, but there's a filter over them, as if you can see a faint image of who they were before they came to be here. Their faces in varying forms of decay wear faded over images of full heads of hair and rosy cheeks. The sand you walks on takes on more depth, and you think to yourself that you never would have imagined there'd be so many different shades of gleaming silver. The light you couldn't source is all around you now, and you understand as well as see that everything here in Hades is emitting a glow that plays with the glow of whatever is around it. Soon your mind begins to touch on a curious thought. This whole place is alive. You don't have much time to dive deeper down that rabbit hole because you notice with a slight panic that you've walked much further past the cave you entered, should have been. Now you stand before a short dock that goes over the river, and there at the end is a small boat, nearly full of a much larger, cloaked figure. Your friend beckons you go forward first. A gloved hand reaches from the pit of black within the cloak and waits. You remove the coin from your mouth and place it in the ferryman's palm, as they gesture for you to get aboard. As you step into the boat, the whispers are back, but not nearly as deafening as before. This time, it's like the movement of the boat and the water disturbs them, but they dissipate quickly like mist. Soon enough, the ferryman leads you through a dark stone passage, and you feel the boat hit a sandy shore. Jumping down and giving the boatman a small nod of thanks, you notice that your new vision allows you to see the glow of the sand, and you follow the dim light to the very edge of the cave. Taking a deep breath and summoning up your bravery, you gently and slowly make your way somewhere, hopefully out. You do eventually make your way out and find that you are precisely where your journey began, though how is beyond anything but magic. You find a stone to sit on while you wait for your companion. You aren't sure how long they'll be, but you don't mind, because you have so much to think about. The moon is bright and full, and it looks like it hasn't moved from the spot you left it in. You adjust to a more comfortable position and wait. Wow, that was spectacular. You did so well. I remember reading about the Temple of Styx in Hesiod's Theogony, a palace towering with rocks overhead and silver columns that rush towards the heavens, but wow, seeing it is something else every single time. Those whispers must have been the oaths made by her waters. You see, the Lady Styx was the first of the Titans to come to Zeus's aid in the battle against the Titans. For this reason, he honored her that her waters would be the water all oaths, contracts, and bindings by the god would be made. So, Iris, the messenger goddess, would come and collect the water of Styx when any of the gods had any serious disputes to settle, or, in more dramatic moments, like when Zeus swore to Semele that he would give her whatever she asked. Yeah, very Zeus. He was so in lust with the human princess that he swore to her that he would do whatever she asked by the waters of Styx. For foolish reasons, she asked him to show her his true form, and he was bound by Styx to heed her request. So, it killed her, because a human seeing a god in their true form is just too much, apparently. It almost killed little demigod Dionysus, their unborn child, in her womb, but Zeus just took him from her womb and sewed him into his thigh until he was ready to be born. Weird, right? Yeah. Unfortunate too, but also really dramatic, mildly entertaining, and very, very strange. That's what I love about Greek mythology. Anyway, Lady Styx did have her river, which was and is a huge deal, but she was a goddess in her own right, like I mentioned. She saw to the care and magic of her river, but she had a life too. She gave birth to some pretty serious deities, as you might expect from the personification of hatred. She had children like Zelos, the personification of rivalry, Nike, the personification of victory, as well as Kratos, strength, and Bia, force. All pretty big ideas to conceptualize, let alone birth. It's easy to see why, when she brought herself and her children to Zeus's aid in battle, he won. Before we leave today, I want to present an idea, a deeper understanding of Lady Styx and her role in the ancient world, and thus her power. Styx is a boundary goddess, and historically, boundary goddesses are some of the most unfuckwithable deities in any culture. There was a belief that Styx was the boundary between the land of the living, both literally and metaphorically. She was the physical river, and she was the invisible force that upheld the boundaries or conditions to cross the river. She was the boundary in every sense. That alone is pretty straightforwardly badass, but is there more? I believe so. I am fascinated by the titles and the epithets given to gods from the ancient world because there is so much context lost between now and then. And of course, there's also the initiated wisdom of the mystery cults of the time. I am constantly seeking this wisdom, so in my seeking, I couldn't help but wonder, why does her name mean hatred? Why is this primordial power dubbed hate? Well, you see, most deities weren't resigned to one wheelhouse. They may have one thing they're really good at, but most gods had a few different dominions they ruled over. Styx was no different. Like I mentioned, she was the goddess of oaths, dubbed so by Zeus after the victory over the Titans. But why? Why take an underworld river deity, hatred incarnate, and make her the enforcer? Because she already was. She already was the physical manifestation of the ultimate boundary. She was already part of the fabric of existence. Therefore, if you were the new king of, well, anything really, you may want that force, that primordial force that stops people from advancing, on your side. So he honored her power by giving her the place of Oathkeeper. It is only logical then that the name Styx came after this place of honor among the gods was given. Styx is translated to mean to hate, to abhor, but in Greek it's more than that. Greek language, both ancient and modern, is poetic. Their words don't just describe a thing, they also describe the feeling of the situation you'd experience the word in. So, Styx means to hate, but it's the hatred you feel when you shudder at the thought of testing a known limit. It's the hatred you feel towards being locked into something that you cannot get out of. It's the already lost battle. Whether this is the idea of death, which no human escapes, or the limits of gods and men, aka oaths sworn by the literal cosmic binding agent of the universe, the goddess Styx herself. If a god were to break an oath sworn by Styx and her waters, they suffered a heavy price. A year of dreamless sleep, followed by 9 years of banishment from Mount Olympus. So, an oath by Styx is a double-edged sword, at least for the gods. Creating a boundary that isn't completely unbreakable, a deity can choose to break their oath by Styx, but in doing so, they acknowledge her power and turn her into witness and enforcer. The divine oath breaker must then endure the consequences. So, her boundaries are not completely unbreakable. You do have a choice, but in making that choice, the very decision acknowledges the power of the goddess, if that makes sense. It blows my mind. Now, if the rules for the gods breaking an oath are harsh, imagine the absolutely unimaginable horror for a human to break a Stygian oath. The mere thought might make you shudder in fear and curse, perhaps, the force that binds you. Now you see the role of Styx. Hopefully, Her depth has struck a chord deep in your soul, just like she has mine. The idea of what Lady Styx represents is one of the most well-developed concepts of society, and the timelessness of this goddess is awe-inspiring to me. Taking in her full might is almost impossible, and revering her is not a choice, but a necessity, lest we face great suffering. That, my friend, is true power. Join me next time as we visit the other 4 rivers of the underworld and venture deeper into the House of Hades. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Amaya, and this is my heart. Until next time.